New UNI2 content is hard to find, so thanks for this. Any thoughts on the update? I don't think I've done any patch notes review for this game, so maybe I'll do one. You know, I was writing the script for this video, and the more I thought about it, the pent-up feelings and opinions I've held on this game started to really flow. So now I'm here reflecting on the whole game design since launch, instead of just looking at the individual patch. And I have a confession to make. I like Under Night and-Birth 1 gameplay more than the sequel. Now, before some of you run away with these words, I'd like to make it very clear that I'm not saying the second one is bad. Otherwise, I would not be playing it and spending hours making content. I clearly want the game to grow. It's just that in the current state, I prefer the older one. It's just a matter of taste. And I thought in this video, I'll explain why I feel this way and the hopes I have for future updates. In order to understand where I'm coming from, let's look a bit into the first game. Under Night and-Birth, Exolate Est, and Krea was known by outsiders to be a timeout game. This is due to some major tournament matches running the clock. And this was true for some matchups and playstyles, but it's not something that dominated the scene. But regardless, I think the French-bred team wanted to wipe that image, so when the sequel was made, the game had a very clear direction. Aggressive moves that led to guesses, more combo routes, and bigger damage. I think trying to make a game with less timeouts and faster pace is totally fine. The issue I have with the game though was the way it was done. Before I go into details, I want to make my preferences clear. I generally value two things in fighting game interactions: balanced risk-reward and a certain level of precision. Why? Regardless of hitting the opponent or getting hit, I want to feel good about it. If I read the opponent well and counter a specific move with a specific attack, it feels deserving and I'll be proud of it. If the opponent does the same to me, I will happily acknowledge their skill. With that said, let's take a look at one of the new moves that Londrakia got in the sequel, Icicle Ring. A projectile that has a diagonal trajectory and pretty much covers the entire screen. Since it homes on where the opponent is, unless they have a strong anti-projectile tool, there is pretty much no way to counter it. The hitbox itself is something I extremely dislike because there is no precision to it. Majority of the time you're going to get hit or you're going to block it. So a move with a hitbox this big should have some level of risk to it, right? 5-frame startup. There's projectile travel time, so it won't usually hit that fast, but still ridiculously fast regardless. Also, significantly advantages on block. According to the wiki, anywhere from +7 to +16. My gosh. Not only is it extremely hard to avoid, but you most likely have to hold the follow-up pressure. What about on hit? In the initial versions of the game, this led to a full combo. I don't remember the details since it's been a while, but I remember getting hit for 3,000 to 4,000 damage, pushed into the corner, and fighting for my life against strong Okizeme. It was so bad initially that Londrakia players just threw this move out haphazardly just to get in. Not much thought was required. Thankfully, this move was slightly nerfed so that it can no longer combo in most situations. The frame data and hitbox is still ridiculous though. Alright, so if things are getting nerfed, it seems like the developers are recognizing some of the qualms I have with the game, right? Well, I don't think it's enough, and there has been much more buffs than nerfs. Let me show you a change that Merkava got in a recent patch and still exists in the game. It's 236C. This is a 12-frame invincible attack that covers half the screen. On normal block, you can only punish with a throw. It's an extremely strong move with really skewed risk-reward. But the buff that it got was how the opponent is launched on hit. That's right, the opponent can be comboed afterwards. This was always the case since the first game, but in the previous one, his options were quite limited unless he had Vorpal to chain shift. He usually did not get good Okizeme afterwards. But now, he can do this. Coast to coast corner carry with the option to do high-low mix-up that can be safe jumped for Okizeme. It's too much. It's way too much. Even as a Merkava main with all the bias, I find this extremely dumb. I'm a staunch believer that invisible attacks should never lead to much besides appropriate damage and reset to neutral. If I were the battle director, I would even allow chain shifts after these attacks hit. Anyways, the point I'm trying to get at is that moves like these are abundant in Under Night Emperor 2, and there's no sign of them slowing down. In a fairly recent balance patch, a bunch of dash attacks got higher damage multipliers, and in case of characters like Byakuya, increased frame advantage. Yes, the long-range lunging low attack that can be cancelled into specials for a full combo can now be significantly advantageous on block if spaced or timed well. Once again, risk-reward. It's very clear that the developers want to force some sort of guess on almost all of the interactions and have a majority of those things lead to huge rewards in Okizeme. I'm fine with certain moves doing that, but there's too much of it for my liking. And that's why I'm so dissatisfied, because these kind of changes really affected how my main character, Merkava, plays. A little background, I've been playing this noodle arm since Exolate Est. Oh boy, that's a long time. And in the previous game, I considered him as a low risk, low reward character. If I got a mid-range hit with 5B or 5C, I got some paltry damage and not much of an Okizeme. Even if I spent meter, mediocre damage, and once again, not much of an Okizeme. The only time I got to convert these hits into huge damage and good Okizeme was if I chain shifted. So I had to be very patient and annoying by keeping the opponent out while trying to win the Vorpal cycle. And considering how shielding and grid charges worked, I felt like both sides had things to do and there was a lot of neat interactions and strategies. But with System Celeste, all of these attacks now lead to more significant results. 5B can now combo into Steer Ender, which grants him frame advantage to do a safe jump Okizeme. If he has meter, he can now pick up after his aerial EX special for a full combo, and again, safe jump or worm Okizeme. Winning Vorpal for damage and strong Okizeme is no longer necessary, and to compensate for these buffs, his 5B and 5C, his two main neutral pokes tools, got nerfed pretty hard. Their hitbox got smaller, while the hurtbox got extended. Sounds like a logical trade-off. However, by making these changes, the character identity for me was completely shattered. The patient, low-risk, low-reward wet noodle slap until Vorpal strategy became much less viable, and I found myself doing a lot more die kicks to counter the myriad of excessively strong lunge attacks the game threw at me. This was really stressful and left a sour taste in my mouth because I felt like I was no longer playing the Merkava I previously loved. Not everything has to go into a full combo and strong Okizeme. There should be a variety of risk-reward. This is why you see the Carmine and now Izumi arc on this channel. I just wanted to play something different because Merkava was no longer an interesting character. The funny thing about all this is that while I'm learning Izumi, I'm getting hints of old Under Night. Her strong approach tool seems to be locked behind summoning Elify, and if she does, she no longer has access to her non-meter reversal. Some of her pressure and convergence require specific spacing and fish summons beforehand, or meter to do EX specials. There's a trade-off, and at times preparation is required. I like the design, but at the same time I'm struggling immensely against other characters because they don't have that kind of requirement. Trying to summon Bubbly Fish at literal full screen, get hit by Phonon's recently buffed 3C that now reaches corner to corner. It was already an incredibly good low. Why did this need a buff? Or get punished by Aurea's charged Divine Thrust that simply gets past it. Of course, I'm still new to the character, so it's natural for me to struggle, but I can't see things getting any less frustrating. So here's the weird part. I want things to be a lot more controlled risk-reward wise, but kind of gave up on it because it was just mostly buffs every patch. But bam, Izumi. Unless I'm completely missing something from the character, I feel like she's in a decent place in terms of total toolkit strength and utility. I want all the other characters to be balanced around her instead of just buffing everyone until none of them have any weaknesses. So her inclusion has given me some hope. Regarding the most recent patch of 1.35, it seems like everyone got a slight health buff and nerfs on backdash and immediate aerial jump attacks. This was changed in order to nerf throw whiff punishes that did more damage than things like assault attacks. This isn't what I expected, and honestly, a weird place to target. For me, it doesn't fix the qualms I have in approach tools, so I'm pretty indifferent about the changes. The extra health is nice, but even if I survive to get one more interaction, I'm still getting hit by the same frustrating stuff. People seem to be happy about the nerfs, but I don't know. what I'm feeling might be close to what veterans of Tekken are feeling in Tekken 8. Maybe not as bad, but the parallels are oddly familiar. You know what? This all sounds like doom and gloom, but I think there is some hope for people like me. Recently, Kawane Serizawa, the battle director for the game, has come out on Discord and mentioned that he is aware of our concerns and that he recognizes there is a group of players who wishes for nerfs. So there might be a possibility of offense being tuned down in the future. And I'm not sure if you guys noticed, but all the examples from the first game I've given is based off of the last two versions. One of the reasons why is that those are the ones I played, but the most important one is that the initial versions, especially the first one, had ridiculously overpowered characters. If you watch high-level arcade footage, you'll often see insanely long combos that often did more than half health, even from really weak starters like 2A. There was also nasty left-right and high-low mix-ups. All those got removed, and the strong tools became much more milder by the last two versions. So it has been done before. Anyways, before I end this video, I'd like to mention that this is preference, and if you like the game in the current state, good for you. I'm not saying the game is bad or my preference is somehow better than yours. But if you do have a different opinion, let me know in the comments. Just make sure to mention which version you started on because I think that will have a huge effect on how you feel. Alright, until next time, have fun with fighting games.